Hello, thank you for joining this Working with France session. I'm Stéphane Bender, CEO of Film France, the French National Film Commission. Today we're going to talk about the tax rebate for international production, the French incentives for film, animation, VFX, and all kinds of productions. And then we're going to have a case study about the Crocodile and the Toothpick Bird, a Chinese series which was shot in France a year and a half ago. Without further ado, I'm going to introduce you to Laurie Ades, who's our tax rebate expert, and who's going to have a presentation of the tax rebate for international production. Laurie, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Stéphane. Hello, everybody. It's a great pleasure to be with you virtually during this Working with France session in the Filmart. So just a quick word about who we are. We are the National French Film Commission. We provide free services for all producers who want to shoot or to work in France. We rely on a network of 44 film commissions all over France, including overseas territories. We provide expertise on the tax rebate for international production, the TRIP, and we are assessing projects eligibility. So we are a one-stop shop. We can provide information about location, regulation, technical facilities, French line producer. We are helping production basically to work in France. And we are assisting, as I was saying, producer applying for the trip. Just a quick word about the French situation. France is ready to shoot with non-French production. Since May 2020, film permits are being issued and shoots are allowed to go ahead. More than 400 shootings took place in France in 2020 and 2021. Even with a local restriction, curfew or lockdown, filming remained possible on a 24-hour, 7-day-a-week basis. Clear guidelines are available to producers and filmmakers to ensure compliance with the new safety rules. And currently, we are working a lot to help foreign talents and crew to cross the border. And I can tell you it works. We have some British and American production shooting right now in France. So there is two ways of working with France. Through official co-production, all state French subsidies through a co-producer, and there are dedicated co-production schemes. You can also work with a tax rebate for international production with a production services company, and you can get 40 or 30% tax rebate on your eligible spend. So let's talk about the trip. What is a trip really? Trip is generous. It can go up to 40%. Trip is simple, no red tape. You just bring a deal memo, a script, and a first estimate of your budget. Trip is reliable. The PSC collects a trip every year from the French tax services. And trip is fast and predictable. You start spending the day you send the application to the CNC, the French National Center for Cinema. And you can now get a brand new 10% VFX bonus that we will talk about it later. So trip is simple. Basically, all formats are eligible, all kind of scripted projects are eligible, except documentaries and commercials. What about the criteria to assess the French tax rebates? You have to be a French-based production services company, a PSC. You have to shoot a minimum of 5 days in France for live action. For animation or VFX work in France, there is no minimum day shooting requirement, of course. You have to spend a minimum of 250,000 euros or half of your total budget, whichever is the lowest. You have to pass a cultural test, including dramatic content, but it's very easy to pass. Just to give you a few examples of the diversity of the projects that are eligible for the trip. We can talk about Mission Impossible, the Hunger Games, the Minions. In VFX, We can talk about Blade Runner 2049, American Gods, and so on. So, how to assess the trip? Trip is reliable, is available through a company that is subject to corporate income tax in France. They will act as a production services company, a PSC, for a foreign producer. They receive the trip through the yearly tax return. And what is very important is that your expenses are eligible from the day the PSC submits your application to the CNC. PSC can be either an existing company or a subsidiary of the foreign production or a special purpose vehicle. Just don't hesitate to take a look to our PSC database available on Film France website. We have more than 100 professionals with a huge variety of languages, knowing how to assess the trip and to shoot with a non-French production. So what kind of expenditure are eligible? There are two kinds. There is one with no cap, as salaries paid for French or European direction and production staff. Expenditure for technical goods and services based in France. All kind of renting location and constructing sets. Transport of materials and all the depreciation expenses. There are some that are capped as salaries, wages of European writers or actors, and accommodation, catering, travel for all the cast and crew. So trip is generous. How much can you get? You can get 30% on tax rebate on all eligible expenses, or 40% tax rebate on all eligible expenses with the 10% VFX bonus. So there is one thing that is very important. For example, if you plan to spend, let's say, 1 million euro in France, but you change your mind and you decide to spend twice more, don't worry and don't hesitate because you will get more rebates. The rule is the more you spend, the more you will get. So there is a big news is that you can now reach, as I was saying, a 40% tax rebate on all your eligible spends if you get the 10% VFX related bonus. So this is the rule for the 10% VFX bonus. This bonus goes for projects which are VFX intensive projects and who spend more than 2 million euro in eligible VFX related expenses. So to summarize, in order to qualify, this project must be a live action fiction film. Animations projects don't qualify. They have to include a substantial amount of digital visual effects, include 2 million euro on eligible expenses relating to the digital processing of the shoots, and to pass cultural tests. If your French expenditure is principally related to digital visual effects, the VFX barème will be used. And if your French expenditure is principally related to non-VFX expenditures, it has to pass the live action tests and to shoot for at least 5 days in France. So more than 400 projects have benefited from the trip, and like 25 nationalities have benefited from the trip. So here there is a few examples of the diversity of the projects. We can talk about Fox Hunt from Chinese feature film, Crocodile and the Toothpick Birds, the series that we have the case study just before, Chinese one, The Man Standing Next, Korean feature films, Mission Impossible, Fallout, and Blade Runner 2049, American feature films. So these two lovely faces are here for any requests or guidance you may need. So do not hesitate to contact us, Stefan Bender, the Film France CEO, and me, Laurie Ades, Head of Production and Tax Rebate. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Laurie. So during your presentation, we had a few questions. There's a first question about, is there a minimum French crew to hire to get the tax rebate?
No, there is no minimum required, but it's better to hire French crew because they know perfectly how to deal with your shooting, and they will count as eligible expenditure for the trip.
Can you remind us the minimal spends that you have to do in France?
So there is two minimum. You have to shoot at least 5 days. You have to spend a minimum of 250,000 euro, or half of your total budget, whichever you have a low expenditure. They are lower than 250,000.
There was another question. Someone was asking if the tax rebates is different depending on where it is shot in France. I mean, is it different between Paris, south of France, or Guadeloupe?
No. It's very reliable because whatever if you choose to shoot in Paris or in the overseas territories or in the south of France, it will be the same tax rebate for all the production, foreign production.
And maybe something our audience doesn't know is that France is all over the world. You have the Guadeloupe Islands in the Caribbean, you have the New Caledonia, which is close to Australia. We have a lot of different areas which are totally part of France, which are totally what we call overseas, which are not in Europe. And of course, the tax rebate works exactly the same way there as it works in Paris. There were two questions which were pretty close to each other. There was one which was about Canada, and the other one which was about Israel. Can we get the trip?
Yeah, if you are a foreign production based in Canada or Israel, and you find a French production services company based in France, if you pass the cultural tests and you shoot at least 5 days, if it's a live action project, yeah, absolutely, you are welcome in France, and we will be able to get a tax rebate.
So I guess you answered to the question of the person who asked about Israel. To get the tax rebate, you have to work in France. It doesn't work to work in Israel. But something I have to mention is that France has 58 co-production agreements with countries all over the world, which means you can make co-productions really easily. And Canada and Israel are two of the countries where the co-production agreements are the most efficient. I mean, so you have to think, if you have a project between France and Israel or France and Canada, you have to think about comparing using the co-production system or using the tax rebate system, which is, as Laurie was saying, totally impossible to combine. Now we're going to jump to our case study just after this. Let's have a look to what the shooting of the crocodile and the toothpick bird was 2 years ago.
One, two, three, go!
出发！你带着2个男生下。
背包什么的。
他们背着呢，有人给你背着，你先下。
在我身上。
啊，你背着呢。Action！ 喂，什么掉了？小爱往前一点。好。首先，你既然选择了在一个你文化语言都不相近、不相通的一个国家拍戏，首先要做好的一个心理准备就是去接受，因为毕竟我们是不同的国家嘛，然后工作习惯不一样，语言不通。看，Découpé, merci.
Pourquoi Ghost City se retrouve à assurer la production exécutive des 20 épisodes de cette série tournée à Bordeaux? Parce qu'il y avait déjà un historique entre membres de Ghost City Et cette production, parce que Ghost City c'est une chinoise et un français au départ, on a cette capacité d'interface entre les deux cultures, et c'est ce qu'on fait d'habitude, parfois pour d'autres choses que des tournages, parce que Bordeaux correspondait bien, et que la France correspondait bien à ce projet, et parce qu'il y a un crédit d'impôt international que nous avons obtenu pour soutenir cette série, qui fait que une partie importante des coûts, finalement, ne reste plus à payer pour les producteurs chinois qui viennent tourner leurs 20 épisodes ici.
那么在这次拍摄中间，我的主要职能其实是保障拍摄的条件，控制拍摄的进度，同时要控制拍摄支出，去倾听他们在拍摄中间的一些需求。
就是如果位置不变，大约在5点的时候可以放飞1到3米，
是的，
拿绳子拽住，
是的，
这是极限。
对，
有一个问题，如果
你要升得更高，它就要横移2个人瞬移往那个方向，移10米左右。
因为你既然选择在国外拍摄，肯定是有国外的美好吸引你。比如说，它有不同的风景，有异域的风土人情，所以同时你也要接受他们和你的差异。
在法国拍摄，我们需要非常多的时间提前筹备，因为有很多的行政流程或者是申请的手续，需要非常多的时间。
Mon expérience passée au sein de Film France m'a habitué à discuter pendant 10 ans avec des collectivités territoriales, avec des élus, avec des institutions, avec des structures publiques françaises. Donc je comprends leurs peurs, leurs demandes, leurs besoins, leurs contraintes. Donc comment on convainc une ville de s'ouvrir à nous? Comme vous l'avez vu, on pouvait avoir le sentiment qu'on faisait un peu ce qu'on voulait dans Bordeaux, mais parce que la ville était convaincue que c'était bon pour eux, et on a fait beaucoup de pédagogie très en amont du tournage, avec des beaux dossiers, beaucoup d'explications pour qu'ils comprennent l'intérêt, qu'ils comprennent leur démarche, et qu'on soit dans un rapport partenariat.
如果说回顾这次中法合作的挑战或者是困难，我个人认为，其实从拍摄工艺或者是技术手段来说，中法双方并没有太大的差异。
因为大家的专业度是一样的，专业性也是一样的，所以在工作当中其实是有共通点的。
Sur ce tournage particulièrement, nous les électro-français, ça a été plus de répondre à la demande des Chinois, de leur amener du matériel quand ils en avaient besoin, parce que la communication est très difficile. Au début du tournage, j'ai essayé de créer un mode de communication, un langage commun. Donc ce que j'ai proposé à Justin, notre traducteur, c'est de nous traduire en chinois le nom de chaque projecteur, de chaque pied, et donc sur un bout de gaffer écrit en noir.
Donc là, il y a marqué le nom du projecteur en chinois,
ouais.
Ils peuvent le prononcer S30, c'est le nom du projecteur, S30, et nous, on a de l'autre côté le nom du projecteur en chinois, et on dit S30, et donc c'est S30.
另外一个我觉得是中法合作的一个难点，其实是在于产能。
在中国拍电视剧，每天的通告的量是非常大的。中国的剧组的团队，通常的工作时间是在18个小时左右。
如果是在法国拍摄一部12集每集1个小时的法剧来说，那可能我们需要3个月的拍摄时间。比如说这部电视剧的拍摄，我们需要在法国55天之内完成20多集电视剧的量，这个工作量对于法国团队来说是非常大的一个挑战。
Nous avions un bulletin de salaire, à peu près 80 techniciens français, puisqu'il faut 2 équipes pour se relayer afin de tourner 7 jours sur 7, c'est la spécificité de tournage, pour coller au bon sens comme au code du travail.
那么其实在中法的合作拍摄中间，在现场的就是即时的信息沟通是非常至关重要的一点，因此我们在建组的初期创建了一支12个人的双语助理团队，一些具有双语能力，同时具有专业技能，然后可以协助到主创的直接工作中间来的这样一个团队。比如说我们的双语美术助理， 他的工作不仅仅是向中方美术指导和法方美术之间传达信息，他同时要参与到所有的置景工作中间。
双语组是一个非常辛苦的部门，他们不光承担着翻译这个工作，他们还要在两个国情不一样、工作方式不一样的两个部队当中做好一个完美的纽带。所以我代表中国工作人员，非常感谢我们所有双语组的每一个成员，谢谢你们，你们辛苦了。
作为协拍制片方，我们是希望能够提供给摄制团队一个非常舒适的工作环境。因为本身拍摄高强度的工作已经非常辛苦了，又在异国他乡，因此我们创建了中法餐车轮流更换制度，3天做一次更换。这样的设置不仅可以保障中国成员可以吃到可口的中国的菜肴，同时也可以让他们在偶尔尝试一下法国料理。同理呢，法国的成员也非常高兴可以发现和尝试一下地道的中国菜。这种设置让大家都挺满意的。
演员辛苦了。
来，我们一起喊杀青啦！1、2、3，杀青！
Nous serons heureux de vous accueillir pour produire votre film, votre série télé en France. Bienvenue dans notre pays.
Wow, this was impressive. So we have the great honor to have with us today Franck Priot, who is the CEO of Ghost City, the production service company who did what you've just seen, and Chouzier, who's the COO of Ghost City and was a co-producer of CROCODILE and the TOOTHPICK Bird. Thank you for being with us today. So we have a lot of questions, and just as before, the audience is invited to ask all the questions in the Q&A box.
Okay, so just to start this case study, thank you, Franck, and thank you, Yeshu. Can you just introduce yourselves and tell us how did you get involved in this huge project?
Hi, thank you for having us today, this morning in France, this afternoon in HK. I guess we got this project because both Shuye and I, we have been working between France and China for 10 years, each of us. As you mentioned, I used to be the head of Film France, and I started to work with a Chinese studio for helping them to come to shoot in my country. At the time, I was in your position, but it was quite an exciting job. And I learned a lot about working between France and China. Ye was doing the same thing, let's say, for private companies. So that means that we are connected to lots of Chinese companies. And it's quite natural that through recommendations, through the advice of one or another, we are getting requests when a Chinese company is wondering, could we do that? Would that be possible to shoot such a project in France? So I think it's the years. And then we created our company, Ghost City, 4 years ago. And since 4 years, now nearly 5, we have been either line producing with Chinese productions in France, but also setting up co-production, helping Chinese company to come to promote themselves during the Cannes Film Festival. So we have a track record of knowing what it is when you have two companies from both countries which are working together. We know what may be difficult, what may be easy, the common elements, the common languages, the gap we have to overcome.
Thank you.
You want to answer as well?
Yes. Hello, everyone. My name is Ruye. I'm the co-founder with Franck. I'm the producer from Ghost City. And I was managing of Frank's production service with Franck for this TV series in Bordeaux. And yes, thanks to Film France for inviting us for this conference. And I'm glad to share with you guys for our experience shooting in France with a Chinese team. Yes, and I guess many of our audience today Chinese speakers, as I'm a Chinese, please allow me to repeat it in Chinese. 大家好，我是来自 Ghost City 的联合创始人舒叶，同时我也是鳄鱼与牙签鸟的联合制片人。非常荣幸能够受邀跟大家一起分享我们在法国拍摄的一些经验，谢谢。Okay.
Thank you. So you mentioned the name Bordeaux. So it's the city where you shot mainly, and the region which is New Aquitaine. And maybe first question is, what brought the production in this area especially?
Okay, the heroes of the series are Chinese students studying in a fictional, prestigious university somewhere in the Western world. And actually, at the beginning, the story was written to be shot in Edinburgh. Then they went to, let's say, broaden the scope of location in which they were exploring to shoot. And then they asked us, okay, would that be possible to do such a shoot in France? Thanks to Film France digital tool, which is the location database, very quickly, in like 24 hours, we went on the Film France database and we looked for a few key locations that we know where, let's say, the key location of the series, starting with the university, because we needed a beautiful, ancient university, something that looks like a kind of a Cambridge or Harvard or Oxford looking university. And we found the University of Bordeaux, an amazing location of Bordeaux. Bordeaux has a feel which is kind of Paris looking, but there is also this big river. So let's say Bordeaux was fitting the need for something which is quite prestigious, ancient looking and very French looking. And on top of that, the word Bordeaux is quite known all over the world, like really thanks to the wine. And even though the series did not have any relationship, was not related to anything with wine and vineyards, Bordeaux, they knew the name. And then thanks to the high-speed train, Bordeaux is just 2 hours away from Paris. So that make it works. And then we got, but we may speak about this later, got a huge support from Bordeaux and the city. But basically, it's a matter of, let's say, the city itself land to be like a fictional Cambridge or Harvard. Shuye, would you want to also explain in Chinese how did we get to be in Bordeaux?
I'll repeat very quickly. 所以因为当时其实因为取景的时候，我们是希望能够找到一个类似于像斯坦福这样的一个大学校园，但是呢，因为各种各样的原因，最终我们选择了在波尔多拍摄。一个是波尔多它有小巴黎的这样一个称号，它很多的景地非常接近巴黎，但是它提供相对于巴黎这样大城市，它提供更加便利的拍摄条件。同时呢，它离巴黎通过快速列车的这个连接，它到巴黎非常快的时间。这样，比如说有很多的我们的技术人员以及相关的一些器材租赁，如果从巴黎来的话，会非常的便利。这是我们选择最终在波尔多进行拍摄的一个重要的原因之一。Yes, that's it.
And maybe you can give us some figures, how many locations, how many days of shooting? I think you said it in the documentary already.
Yeah, that was actually the challenge of this TV series, and that it might be why we got it, why we were chosen, because we were from the start we were okay having 60 days of shoot non-stop. I mean that we shot days after days for 60 days. without a break on weekend, without a break on Sundays. And that means that that's huge. Actually, it's the longest non-shop shoot that ever happened in France. All kind of production together. It's like nobody never tried to do that. Our Chinese friends, the incoming production, needed to shoot all the time in order to, let's say, to better take advantage of the availabilities of the two stars. So it's like in order to take really to be to use as them as much as possible. That's why we are shooting all the time. But that means being able to organize a system for making that workable, making that legal in France as well, of course. And so that was the biggest difficulty of this TV show, which was going we had 60 locations, which is a lot. And you might wonder why we can have 60 locations in 60 days, because that's very fast. Because our Chinese friends, they are super good. They do 1 or 2 takes, that's it. And they shot with 3 cameras. They go super fast. They are super professional. We were like, wow, they are good, really. And so that's why. So that's not only this location we are in Bordeaux, but you might have seen that we went to the Pyrenees mountain. We had to bring 100 people at 500,000 meters high in order to set up stunts on a cliff. We went to shoot in Saint-Emilion with hot air balloon. So it's like, the key figures would be like 200 crew members, Chinese and French together, 60 days of shoot non-stop, and 60 locations. That's what I would say that, would you agree, Shuye?
Yes. 我们这个片子主要是因为在波尔多取景的时候，因为它在剧本中间有非常多样化的这样的景地，像刚才 Frank 提到的，有山区，然后也有葡萄园，也有有酒庄诸如此类的。但是在波尔多这样一个地点，它可以满足以上所有的一些场景要求，同时它所有的就是与当地的配合，之后我们会提到与当地市政府的配合给予我们非常多的帮助。因此我们其实在这部剧总共拍摄60个拍摄日中间，我们大概有超过60多个场景 finished.
and to realize all this, I guess you must have been supported by the city and the regions. Did you collaborate with them?
Of course. I mean, that's actually was the first thing we tried to do. I mean, finding 60 locations means a lot of scouting time, and the Chinese production designer came two times ahead of the shoot in order to find the location. But at the same time, we made great effort into getting the mayor's office and the elected people in Bordeaux to understand what was the point of having such a leading TV series with stars to be broadcasted on Hunan TV, which is a huge channel in China. So we contact them like 3 months ahead, and we make beautiful presentation. We made a lot of appointments, and in order to make them understand that could be really cool for Bordeaux. And they also knew that we hire all crew members. The 100 people that we hired, the French ones, they were all for Bordeaux. That they also knew that their taxpayers were also hired for the shoot. And that's why we ended up to the situation that you have seen in the video, where we are together with the mayor of Bordeaux, which is a former prime minister in France, so a very important people, a very important guy, that basically we were welcomed by the mayor of Bordeaux because they could see the point of like the promotion effect. So we never signed a piece of paper with Bordeaux, but we set up an informal but very real partnership with them. And so they were very flexible and willing to be to help us, because 60 location, that means that sometimes because of the weather, you have to change, you have to swap one location for another. And all the time, this French city Bordeaux was super reactive, was super, sometimes they were ready to accommodate our last minute request, because we knew that that was important, because we knew working between France and China, the biggest difference is not the way we work on the set. The biggest difference is time management. Shuya, how would you describe this thing? Like the way working with Bordeaux is this time management difference?
我觉得在这部片子中间的拍摄过程中间，的确是波尔多政府给了我们非常非常多的支持。就像刚才 Frank 提到的，就是因为我们的场景非常的多，同时给予我们就是在拍摄前的准备时间其实是较为仓促的。那么其实波尔多政府给我们开通了绿色通道，就包括在非常多的拍摄许可和场地许可的申请上面，给了我们非常快速的反应，是超出寻常的一个反应机制的。当然，这是我们跟波尔多当地政府建立了一个良好的合作机制之后，我们所得到的这样的特殊的一种支持。同时我们就不像大家想象中间的，日常情况下，如果在法国申请拍摄许可需要很长的时间，但其实这个机制是可以，如果我们提前准备、提前沟通，是可以非常加速这个过程的。
Thank you. So one of you is French and the other is Chinese, as we understood. Can you tell the audience concretely what the advantages of having a French-Chinese crew managing this kind of shooting? And as you were saying, I even heard that you found a stunt coordinator speaking French and Chinese. So can you tell the audience a little bit more?
Yeah, the point is that it's important to understand that Shuyi and I, we have both co-founders and shareholders of the company. So I mean that we totally trust each other, which means that the company really rely on Shuyi's ability to understand our Chinese producer working with us, the same way that Shuyi relies on me for dealing with all kinds of French regulation authorities or personalities. And I think that's really important, because the translation is one thing, but the mindset difference are really important to understand. And to tell the truth, what Shuyi is good at is that she understands the dynamics of the Chinese side. She understands the dynamics of the relationship between the producer, the Daoyan, the director, the financiers, the crew. I mean, she's Chinese. What she does also is to produce Chinese TV series. She's a Chinese producer, which is part of a French production service company that shoot Chinese production in France. And actually during the shoot, she was the only Chinese producer on the set. And she was the one speaking all the time with the Daoyan, the director, Lin Yan, because they were trusting her for knowing she knows their worries, their problems, what's important for them. And that's priceless, because at the same time, I'm supposed to be the one having the same abilities with France. Yeah, would you answer the question?
Yes, thank you so much for your kind word. Yes, as mentioned by Frank, we complete each other very well in our work, because we both worked in France and China during a long time. And
you can go on in Mandarin.
Oh, okay. OK， 因为 Frank 呢，他之前是有非常丰富的经验，尤其是在法国的所有的拍摄的，还有就是法国的拍摄政策以及退税的相关政策方面，他有非常多的经验。然后，因为我们同时都是在法国跟中国工作，所以我们非常了解 两国不同的国情和工作习惯以及不同的文化，同时是工作的最重要的是一个工作节奏。我们认为就是说翻译就是语言其实不是最重要的，最重要的是理解大家不同的担忧以及对工作的需求，以及就是尊重彼此的文化。所以我们在合作过程中间非常的互补。因此我们创建了 Ghost City 是一个以中法文化相关为来自世界各地的来法国拍摄的摄制组提供协拍服务的一个这样的公司。
Thank you. Just a quick word about one key point about the daily life. What about the accommodation and food? But very quick because we are running out of time for the Q&A.
Yeah, I guess we had the same way we were swapping from one French team to another every 3 days in order to make that possible, to have French crew members working 7 days a week, 12 hours a day. We were also changing from one canteen, from one food truck service every 3 days, and I think that was important. What do you think, Shuye?
Yes, I agree. 就是因为我们在拍摄过程中间非常的辛苦，那么我们希望是说可以提供更多的后勤服务，给大家一种就是没有那么强烈的在异国他乡的一个感觉。那么，所以我们设立了一个就是并行的一个双餐车的一个这样的机制。那么每3天做一个更换，就像我们在 making of 中给大家看到那样，所以大家觉得就是说，我们在后勤服务上给他们更多的支持，其实可以改善他们在工作中的一个工作状态。我们认为这是非常重要的一点。
Thank you. So last but not least, can we talk about the tax rebate for international production? Because this series benefited from the trip, and did your client appreciate this incentive? Can you tell us the audience concretely?
Yeah, and I have something good to say about the trip, which I was supposed to know because, as you know, I was the one setting it up when I was at Film France. So I actually studied myself the first 250 application, and I rediscovered how reliable and quick it was when I was for the first time in the position of applying on behalf of the Chinese production. Yeah, I think what really impressed our Chinese producer was that one day after the end of the shoot, we told them, okay, we have spent this amount of money, therefore we will get this amount to the last euro of tax rebate. And a few months after that, we got a letter from the tax office saying, yes, you are entitled to get X amount of money. And it was exactly the number, like to the last euro, it was exactly the number that we had said we would get. And that means that that shows the way the system is predictable and reliable. And they were like, wow, quite impressed, because to some extent, you know, this tax-based mechanism, they are quite mysterious for foreign producers. They wonder really how that could work. And the fact that, okay, you know, if you have done your job well, and it seems we did, you know what you will get. That's impressive.
Yeah.
Shuye, what do you mean? What do you think?
对，就是在这个国际制片基金抵免这一块，就 TRIP， 我们当时提交了所有的审核材料，然后我们提报的和预估的数值跟我们最终得到的这样的一个抵免和返税的数值是完全一致的，这一点让大家非常的惊讶。但是就是说如果我们做到非常良好的一个财务机制，同时所有东西都按照法律法规正常的申报，那么获得这个国际制片资金抵免的几率是非常大的，同时得到的这个所有的测算是非常准确的。这一点，同时在各种各样的在法国的花费上面有哪一些是 合理的，可以计入这个测算的，这个需要就是进一步的来讨论。但是我们得到了一个非常好的结果，我们的客户也非常的满意。Yes.
Thank you for all those informations. And now we're going to answer to some questions which appeared in the chat. There is one about the support you got from the city of Bordeaux and the region. And one person was asking, would other shooting projects would obtain such an help? Are you unique, or do you think you could have some kind of support for other productions you would bring in this area or other ones?
The reason we got this support is because we knew how to talk with the leaders of the city. They are prepared, and Bordeaux could welcome really and open its arm to many other productions. It's the way you're dealing with that. It's the way you are setting up a relationship. And I guess this is something that can be understood by Chinese people, is how do you create a relationship with the city? Who do you know who knows them as well? So it's not, it's because of this, I mean, it helped in the case of this series that we had very professional Chinese talents, like the director and her crew. She was wow. But basically, it's a way of dealing with them. So the same way we got Bordeaux to open itself for this shoot for a Chinese production, we could get another French city or Bordeaux again to open up and to be welcoming, friendly, and flexible for any other Chinese production. Yeah. You mean?
我非常同意 Frank 刚才的说法，就是其实并不是仅仅是这一部剧可以让我们得到比如说当地政府，比如说波尔多政府的这样的支持，其实取决于我们合作者的这个合作度，同时取决于我们所拥有的时间。那么越早我们可以开始跟当地政府进行这样的沟通，请他们支持我们的拍摄，同时给我们提供各方面的方便。但是其实我们也需要非常一定的时间来准备所有的介绍资料，包括摄制组的介绍资料。那么其实是双方共同的一个努力结果，造成我们可以获得这样的支持。那么其实这个支持是可以复制的，那取决于我们有多少时间和来自于各国的这样的拍摄组它的配合度。
There's another question about the production itself. I'm reading it right now, so you have it basically. So, is the series French-Chinese co-production using the Treaty of Co-production that is existing? So this is the question.
Okay, as you know, but I know you can answer this question as well, Stéphane. No co-production treaty between China and France for TV. There is one for movies, but not for TV. And the reason is that the point of setting up a co-production between the French-Chinese company will be that both sides will invest into the production, and then that the production will be broadcasted or seen in theaters in both countries. And so far, let's say TV production are probably more local, which means that there never had any Chinese, there is a TV series that would appeal to both markets, to both audience. So that's why it seems unlikely, let's say, the traditional TV series, a Chinese TV series like 40 episodes of 40, 45 minutes, which was the case of Crocodile and Toothpick Bird, doesn't lend themselves to be interesting for the European markets, the European audience. So I don't think it would be possible to find a co-producer. There might be exception, but it's the way we do TV series, they are much shorter, only 8 or 10 episodes. So it's very different. This said, in a way, by coming to shoot and using the tax rebate, you also get money from France. I mean, without having this partnership. let's say, with a different kind of, it's always a partnership, but it doesn't go through this long process of finding a partner, waiting for him to find investor on inside, and sharing the revenues. Does that answer the question?
Yes, I guess. And the other thing probably I would add is that you have to choose between like a production and the tax rebate, and the choice was put on the tax rebate in this case. I mean, especially. But as you were saying, there is no TV production agreement. This is the first reason.
Yeah, but also the two markets. Let's say the two markets are too far from each other when it comes to TV. In our case, it went so fast. I mean, we got the first WeChat message in what, Shuye? In March?
Yes, March or April.
April 1st. I think we did the first scouting in April 1st, and we were shooting for 60 days we started on August 22nd. So it means like 4 or 5 months. You don't set up a co-production for 4 series for 40 episodes in 6 months. It goes much faster. The reality is the trip fits this model of all this production from all over the world that needs to go to shoot somewhere, which are not necessarily looking for money.
Do you have something to add, Shuye? Maybe in Mandarin? I don't know.
OK， 就像刚才他们两位所提到，其实合拍的制度现在并没有应用于电视剧的拍摄方面，就中法两国的合拍协议。但是这并不阻碍我们其实来法国拍摄的所有的中国剧组来获得这个 trip， 因为只要你在法国有正常的开销，那么你就可以得到这样的一个国际制片资金的一个抵免。同时它的好处在于，就是我们不需要取得双方的一个合拍条例的各方面的审定，这个会加快一个因为如果是真正的一个中法合拍的一个电视剧的话，需要双方有特别多的，无论是资金方面的认定，或者是内容上面认定。在现在我们看来，这还是一个非常难的一个阶段，因为同时两国的拍摄的这个节奏也不一样，同时两国观众的喜好也不一样，非常难以达成一个真正的中法合拍的电视剧。Yes.
There's another question, which was when the audience saw the making of. Obviously, this was a pre-pandemic shooting, and what would you think the overcost would be, and how many more days would it need nowadays in this post-pandemic era to do the same? Do you think it would be a big deal to make the same now?
Okay. There would be an extra cost for cleaning, safety regulation. Like, would we need more shooting days? Not necessarily. Actually, some of our locations were either very contained. We shot for 8 days inside the old Bordeaux University. So when you're still in the same place, it's easier. We had the full control of the university, so it was easier. And sometimes we were in the mountain or in the fields, so it won't have been very difficult. I think it would be a little bit more expensive, probably like 3, 4, 5%. That's it. Not necessarily making the shoot longer. And by the time flights will resume between China and France, because right now it's extremely difficult to go back and forth, I think it will be possible to shoot in the same condition we shot in 2000 or 2018. Yeah,
I think you are very clear.
Okay.
I have nothing to add.
Okay, perfect. So to close this wonderful discussion, can we share with the audience one of your best anecdotes of this shooting?
I think that you know, when you shoot for 60 days with 200 people at a very speedy pace, many things happen. So it's like, there are two things which were, for me, that remain, is that, as you might have seen in the video, we managed to have, for the mountain stunts sequences, we have the star Changtianai, which is held by a rope on the cliff. We find a French stunt coordinator who actually lives in China, and he speaks Mandarin, and that was very convenient. Actually, the third day of the mountain sequences, he was the one directing the B team, and the director, she went back to Bordeaux and she let him manage the shoot. And the other thing which was quite impressive is that, and it's about going back to the partnership we set up with Bordeaux, is that speaking with them ahead of the shoot, like maybe 3 months ahead, we understood that they had just opened this new museum, La Cité du Vin, the wine city, which is an impressive, with beautiful modern architecture, which a museum about wine and its culture. And it was important for them. Obviously, we did not have any sequences in the script, which was supposed to be shot in this museum. But we went to speak with them, and Ye spoke with the Taoian as well. And we managed to have French and Chinese agreeing on taking one sequence, and put it inside this wine museum. This wine museum welcomed us for free, because they could see the point to suddenly promote this new museum by putting it in a show that would be aired on all the internet platform and would be on Hunan TV. And that is the partnership. And this is something we did because that was cool to support Bordeaux, and Bordeaux thought that it was cool to support us. That's, for me, that's some of the most amazing things that happen. Shuye, what do you think? What stays in your mind? What?
我最高兴的事情就是这部电影，这部剧集的拍摄，我们完美的在60天内没有超1天周期，而且没有超支的情况下，同时我们还节省了一部分的开支。节省的意义在于，就是我们获得了国际制片资金的抵免因此大家都非常开心，这是我最开心的一件事情。
So thank you to both of you for having been with us and sharing your experience. Thanks to our audience for having attended this Working with Friends session. See you soon in France. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.